All right, welcome back, guys. Today we're in Chapter 8. In the introduction, if you guys read along with me, do you remember learning about the famous Calaveras County Frog Jumping Contest in Chapter 1? In Section 8.1, you will return to the data from the frog jumping contest. This time, you will use new tools to analyze and compare groups of frogs. You will also look at more ways to display and interpret the data. In Section 8.2, you will transition to the subject of statistics. Your work in this section will build on your knowledge of statistics to look at statistical questions. Then in Section 8.3, you will work with more real-life situations, revisit math ideas you have already studied, and learning new strategies to apply to new contests. When traveling in a car, for example, have you ever asked, when are we going to get there? Did you know that you can use mathematics to answer that question? In Section 8.3, you will use diagrams like the ones you use for percents to find relations between distance, rate, and time. You will also learn how to compare quantities that are very different. In Lesson 8.1.1, we are going to talk about measures of central tendency. Data can be described and displayed in a variety of ways. You have already worked with many displays of data, such as tables and graphs. Today, you will focus on how to analyze and describe data numerically. Specifically, you will learn how to make statements to describe a set of data numerically. As you do today's activities, ask yourself these questions. Number 1, how can I describe the data? Number 2, what number best describes what is, quote, typical? And number 3, how are data measures useful? So our first problem today is talking about taking a census, and that's convenient because I just got my census information in the mail yesterday. Have you ever heard of a census? A census is a collection of data that describes the people living in a country. The United States government performs a census every 10 years. The government uses the data to learn such things as how the population is changing, where people live, what types of family exist, and what languages are spoken. For example, in the year 2000, there were 281,421,906 people surveyed for the census, and about 8 million of them lived in New York, New York. Today, you will take a census of your class to answer the questions. What is the size of a typical family for the students in your math class? So Ms. Lanzo and I gave you guys a Google form to fill out yesterday online for after you took your test. You guys will open that information and use that data from your class to answer this question. So if we were in class, we would have done the sticky dot where you guys would have came up on the board. But instead, again, you guys are using the data that you guys filled out in that Google Doc. So what is the difference between the largest piece and the smallest piece of data in your class? This difference is called the range. Okay, so you're going to go ahead and open that document. Look for which piece of data is the largest and which one is the smallest. The difference means you subtract them, and then your answer would be called the range. This is one way to measure the spread or variability of the data. So go ahead and take a minute and find the range of your class's data and record it in your class notes.
Now, as some of you have done the difference, some of you might have taken the smallest number and subtracted it from the largest number, and you probably got a negative number there. What you want to do is make sure that you take the largest number of data and subtract it from the smallest number of data in your class data to get your range.
Okay. So moving on to another thing that we can do with statistics. What number falls right in the middle of all of the class data when data is sorted in order? So what does it mean to put something in order? If we were at our choir concert and Mrs. Clay asked you guys to line up shortest to tallest, you guys would know what to do. In fact, you guys have probably done that many times. The median is like the middle of that data. So the person who's straight in the middle of the tallest to shortest would be the person in the middle. The median is the same thing, but with numbers. You always want to make sure that when you have data that you're collecting, that you organize it least to greatest or greatest to least, so that we can make these discoveries. So again, the number that falls in the middle of your class's data is called the median. So you need to go ahead and pause the video, take your class's data, and on your class notes, order it from least to greatest or greatest to least, and find out which number is in the middle. And record that in your work for today.
Okay, so this is not your census information or your how many family members are in your household, but we took our dot plot from the beginning of the year of how many animals you had in your house. So I'm just going to give you an example of how to find range, and you're going to take your largest number, which in this case our largest number is going to be 5, and our smallest number, and in this case it's going to be 0. So your range is going to be 5 minus 0 to give you a range of 5. Now for your median, you're going to take the data within the dot plot and you're going to put it in order from least to greatest. So we have 0, 0, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 4, 4, 4, 4, and 5, and 5. Now, go ahead.
So remember we talked about in the beginning of the year with this dot plot that each of those dots represented one piece of data or one piece of information. So it is important though, even though more than one student had 0, more than one student had 2, 4, and 5, that we list that dot or that set of data each time that we have gathered that data. So you'll notice that Miss Lanzo has more than one of a lot of those values up there.
So then when you're finding the median, you can either go ahead and work your way to the center, or I like to cross out the first and the last and work your way in.
So because the middle of our numbers here actually are two numbers, 2 and 2, okay, because they're the same number, we know the median is 2. But if for some reason you guys had two different numbers there, like 2 and 3, you would need to find the middle of those two values. In that case, it would be 2.5, because that's halfway between 2 and 3. So if there are questions on how to find the median and the range, please let one of us know. So now moving back to core problem 8.2. Each day, Erica tracks the depth of the water in her local creek. Her first 9 measurements in inches are below: 16, 15, 13, 12, 17, 14, 11, 9, and 11. What is the median? So we want to think about what do we need to do in order to find the median. Think about the middle. Again, if you were at your choir concert, how would you guys arrange yourself? Least height to greatest height. So if you look at your data, is it ordered least to greatest? And the answer would be no. So we want to go ahead and organize that information least to greatest.
So go ahead and pause the video at this time and try to order it from least to greatest. Okay, so we are going to find the median of this data here. And again, you could go ahead and cover them up until you get to the middle, but I like to cross off the smallest and the largest and work my way in. And in this case, our median or our middle number is going to be 13. So 13 inches.
So letter B goes on to say Erica's next 3 measurements in inches are 9, 10, and 9. So we need to go ahead and add those new sets of data to our data set. So notice that we added our 2 additional 9s here, and we added our 10 right here. And we want to know what is the new median. So we want to think about, does the strategy change? No, we still want the middle value. So let's go ahead and try Mrs. Lanzo's strategy again. Uh-oh, we have 2 numbers now. We have an 11 and 12, and both of those are in the middle. So what is halfway between 11 and 12? Everybody? Thank you. Sounds about as loud as if we were actually in class. So it's really pretty easy. Okay, we want to think about median. Okay, at med sounds a little bit like middle. Okay, so a lot of times that's how kids remember it. If we were here in school, we would have had you guys kind of simulate being at a choir concert and having you guys all stand up and then have the 2 ends sit down and the next 2 and the next 2 sit down until eventually you guys have one person in the middle. Okay, and if you have two people in the middle, then you guys know halfway between them is the middle. All right, great job, guys. All right, so last question for today. What is the average? So we talked about the median, the middle number. We've talked about the range, which is the difference between the largest and smallest number. Now the last term we're going to talk about today is called the mean. So we're going to have to change this a little bit from class today because we're not here in school. So now obtain one cube or other manipulator from your teacher to represent each person in your family. And the whole point is we want to create a human dot plot. So instead of you guys being here and creating a dot plot, we're going to go back to the dot plot you guys created in the beginning of the school year, when we talked about the number of pets you guys had. Because it's probably comparable to approximately, obviously I guess we probably don't have 0 people in our household, but we're going to go with it. So we're going to change, the census is going to be about our pets. So you guys will notice, if you guys think about, if we asked you how many people responded to this question, you would do what? Ms. Lanzo's counting up her dots, and that because each of those represented, again, one set of data. So we're going ahead and define the mean. It says if the cubes were redistributed, so everyone in the class had the same number of cubes, how many cubes would each person have? So meaning in this example, if we took all of your family's pets and put them in a room and made sure everybody had an equal number of pets, so nobody had 0, nobody had 5, we all had the exact same number of pets, we would want to know how many we each get. That's what we call the mean.
So in order to find the mean, you first have to take your set of data and add them up. So right here we have 2 sets of 5, so that's going to be our 10. We have 4 under the 4, and that's going to be 16. We have 7 dots under the 2, so that's going to be 14, and then 1, and then our zeros. We don't add. We do add, but we're not going to add it in this case because it's just going to...
It's not going to add to our sum here.
Thank you.
So when we add all of our values, we should get a total value of 41 pets. Those 41 pets are going to be distributed among the 16 people in our class, or at least that was in our class on that day. So we've been working on division. And in division, we talked about having something and distributing it equally into a certain number of groups. So if we're talking about this is the total number of pets we have, and we're distributing it equally among 16 people, think about how you would write that as a quotient. Okay, go ahead and solve 41 divided by 16. So the answer you guys should have gotten was 2 and 56/100. Now, obviously, we're talking about pets here. We're not talking about something that we are going to cut apart like licorice. So you would need to decide who gets 2 pets and 3 pets here, but mathematically, it'd be 2 and 56/100. So we did this example with you guys because, again, you're not here to do the human dot plot. You all have information from the Google Doc you guys filled out. So what we need you guys to do is to go ahead and go back to question 8.3, and you guys need to go ahead and find the mean using your class's data. And at that point in time, you guys should have had to been able to find the range, the median, and the mean of that data. Fit in. So an outlier is a piece of data that's much larger or much smaller than the rest of the data. Imagine that a student with a family of 20 people joined your class. How do you think the range and the measures of central tendency, meaning the mean and the median, of your class's data would change with this additional piece of data? Which measure would change the most? So we're going to go back to our example again of the class pets. Notice Ms. Lanza went ahead and extended our number line to 20. And you guys can see, if somebody with 20 pets, or even in this day and age, 20 people who live in their house is probably a lot. So we went ahead and added a new dot here at 20 to represent that new family of 20. And if you look at our data up here, do you guys think that that 20 is a number that doesn't make sense with the rest of our class's data? Probably, because it's 4 times as big as our largest number we previously had. So go ahead and think to yourself, which measure of central tendency would change the most? The mean, the median, or what would happen to the range? So Miss Lanza is going to talk to you about how would the range change.
So our first range, we just had 5 minus the 0, which gave us a range of 5. But in this case, now that we added an outlier of 20, we have to do 20 minus 0 to get the range of now not 5, but 20. So because our outlier is so far away from our other data that's close together, it's going to affect or increase our range by a lot more.
So now we want to talk about the median, how the median would change. So again, we need to go back and organize our information least to greatest. So we're going to go ahead and have 0 twice, 1, and then we have 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. We don't have any 3s. We have 4 4s, 2 5s, and now we got to go back and add our family of 20. So remember the median is just the middle value, so we're going to go ahead and cross off the first and the last, and then the first and the last until we get to the middle. And we find that our median is 2.
And our previous median was also 2.
So the median is one of two things is going to happen with an outlier. Number one, it's not going to change at all. Or number two, it's going to change very little. So there's a lot less impact on the median as there would be with the range. The last thing we want to talk about then is the mean. So recall that the mean is the average. Okay? The mean or the average is you guys do it all the time when you guys find your grade. You guys see how many points you guys have, and you divide it by the number of questions on the test. So we're going to go ahead and add up all of our values again. So we had 0, plus we had 1, plus 14, plus 16,
plus 10,
plus 10,
and now plus 20.
And earlier we had 16 people, okay, that we were dividing it among. Now we're dividing it among 17 people, or in this case 17 families. So that would give us a mean of 3 and 58 hundredths. And if you recall earlier, our mean was 2 and 56 hundredths.
So this changed very little compared to our range, which jumped from 5 to 20. Our median stayed the same, if not changed a little, but our mean also changed a little. Why?
Question 5, we've actually already done a little bit of this in question 3 since we weren't here to do the human dot plot. So let's kind of close this lesson out for the day. Letter A, so if we go back and collected our data about our class's family, we want to know how can we use numbers and symbols to represent what happens when everyone puts all of their cubes together. So when we put all of our data together, what are we doing? We are adding all of the numbers together, like adding all of our number of pets, right? All of the number of our people in our family. So then question E says, how could we use those numbers and symbols to represent what happens when we divide them evenly? So we're taking what we have and we are dividing them among a certain number. That's division. Okay. And what are we doing when we divide it? In letter C, we're finding the mean. So in letter C, it's asking us to find the mean. So the mean, another word for mean is the average. We add up our data and we divide it by the number of sets of data that we have. A couple other things we talked about in this lesson was range, and again, the range is just subtracting the largest number and the smallest number. Okay, and we found the median, which is just finding the middle point in our data when organized the greatest. Hope you guys had a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.